I caught them, my son whispered. Who? I asked. He handed me his phone. I saw his girlfriend's name, then I saw my husband's. I didn't understand it right away. I thought maybe I was misreading something or mixing up names. It didn't feel real enough to be real. Ian stood in front of me, not moving, watching my face like he already knew what part would break me. Scroll, he said. So I did. At first, it was just messages between him and Lily. Arguments. Him asking questions, her dodging them. She kept saying things like, it's not what you think, and please just listen, and he kept asking the same thing over and over. How long? She never answered that directly. Then I saw the screenshots. My stomach dropped before my brain caught up. They were conversations. Not between Ian and Lily. Between Lily and George. I actually paused, like if I stopped long enough it would correct itself. Like my eyes would adjust and I'd realize it said something else. It didn't. I kept scrolling. At first it was small. Casual. A comment here, a reply there. Things that could almost pass as harmless if you didn't look too closely. Then it changed. The tone shifted. The messages got more familiar. More comfortable. Too comfortable. I saw dates. Times. My chest tightened. They lined up with normal days. Nights when we were all in the same house. Evenings when I was in the kitchen, when Ian was in his room, when George was sitting on the couch like nothing was wrong. And somewhere in between all of that, he was messaging her. I kept reading even though I didn't want to. I saw him asking if she got home safe. I saw her sending pictures of random things during the day. I saw the kind of back and forth that builds slowly, like something that wasn't supposed to start but did anyway. Then I saw the line. Don't overthink it, okay? I stopped breathing for a second. That was his. That was something George said all the time. To me. Every time I questioned something. Every time I felt something was off. He said it like it fixed everything. And there it was. Sent to her. My hands started shaking. I didn't even notice until the phone almost slipped. I scrolled faster. There were weeks of this. Maybe longer. I couldn't tell where it started because my head felt too loud to track anything properly. I didn't see anything explicit. Nothing obvious enough to point to and say, that's the moment it crossed the line. It was worse than that. It was quiet. Built over time. Like something that became normal for them. And that somehow made it feel more real. I put the phone down on the counter like it was too heavy to hold. For a second, I didn't look at Ian. I couldn't. When I finally did, he wasn't angry. Not the way I expected. He looked done. How long have you known? I asked. A few weeks, he said. My stomach twisted. You've known for weeks? He nodded. I didn't know how to tell you. I leaned back against the counter because my legs suddenly felt weak. How did you even find this? He let out a short breath. She messed up. Sent me something that wasn't meant for me. I didn't ask what it was. I didn't think I could handle hearing the details yet. I checked her phone after that, he added. That's when I saw everything. Everything. The word just hung there. Did you talk to him? I asked quietly. He shook his head immediately. No. Why not? His voice dropped. Because I didn't know what to say. He's my dad. That hit harder than anything I had read on the screen. Not just the betrayal. The position it put Ian in. I closed my eyes for a second, trying to steady myself, but all I could see were those messages. The timestamps. The way it overlapped with our normal life like it didn't matter. Where is she now? I asked. I don't know, he said. I told her not to contact me again. There was no hesitation in his voice when he said that. That part, at least, was already over for him. I nodded slowly, even though my head still felt like it wasn't catching up. Okay, I said. Okay. But nothing was okay. The house suddenly felt different. Like something had shifted in a way I couldn't undo. I picked up the phone again, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to be sure. I opened one of the screenshots again. Read the same lines. Looked at the names. Lily. George. There was no confusion. No misunderstanding. Just something I hadn't seen until it was already there. I set the phone back down and looked at Ian. We're not going to pretend this didn't happen, I said. He gave a small nod. That's when I realized something else. He wasn't waiting for me to figure it out. He already had. And whatever this was, it didn't start when I saw those messages. It started weeks ago. And I had been the last one to know. I didn't confront George right away. Ian went upstairs after handing me his phone, like he had already said everything he needed to say. No anger, no shouting. Just quiet. That kind of quiet that feels final. I stayed in the kitchen, holding his phone longer than I should have. I told myself I just needed to be sure. That maybe there was something I missed. Something that would explain it in a way that didn't feel like everything was falling apart. There wasn't. I sat down and started reading from the top. Slower this time. Actually paying attention to how it started. At first, it looked almost normal. Lily messaging George about something small. A question about a class. A joke. Something that could have passed as polite conversation between someone younger and someone older in the house. That's how it began. That's what made it harder to accept. Because there wasn't a clear line where it turned wrong. It just drifted there. The replies got longer. The tone changed. It became familiar. Personal. Comfortable in a way it shouldn't have been. I saw him asking how her day was. I saw her telling him things that didn't belong in those messages. Then I started noticing the timing. Late at night. After I had gone to bed. Early mornings. Times when Ian would have been busy or asleep. And then there were the gaps. Hours with nothing. But I knew what those meant. I checked the dates again. One of them landed on a night I remembered clearly. We had all been home. I was folding laundry in the living room. Ian was in his room. George said he had to step outside to take a call. He stayed out longer than usual. I didn't think anything of it at the time. Now I did. I kept reading. There was a message from her. Are you sure this is okay? And right under it, his reply. Don't overthink it. I stared at that longer than anything else. Because it wasn't just something he said. It was something he had always said to me. Every time I questioned something. Every time I felt something was off. And now he was saying it to her. Like it belonged there too. I put the phone down for a second, pressing my hand against the counter just to steady myself. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just felt cold. Like something inside me had already started shutting down. I picked the phone back up. There were no clear lines crossed in one moment. No obvious point where I could say, this is when it happened. It was gradual. Quiet. Built over time. And that somehow made it worse. Because it meant he had choices. Over and over again. And he kept choosing it. I don't know how long I sat there before I heard the front door open. George. Everything in me tightened. I didn't move. I didn't hide the phone. I just sat there waiting. He walked in like it was any other night. Set his keys down. Took off his jacket. Hey, he said. You're still up. I looked at him and for a second, I couldn't connect the man standing in front of me with the messages on the screen. Same voice. Same face. Nothing looked different. And that made it worse. Yeah, I said. He glanced toward the hallway. Where's Ian? Upstairs. He nodded slowly, like he already sensed something was off. Everything okay? He asked. I stood up and held the phone out to him. Read it, I said. He hesitated. What is it? Just read it. He took the phone. I watched his face as he scrolled. At first, nothing. Then something shifted. His jaw tightened slightly. His eyes slowed down. But he didn't look confused. He looked like someone who had just been caught. He lowered the phone. There was a few seconds of silence. I can explain, he said. I shook my head. Don't. Because I didn't want to hear anything that made it smaller than what it was. How long? I asked. He looked down for a second. A couple months. The words just sat there between us. A couple months, I repeated. He nodded. It didn't start like that, he added quickly. It was just talking at first. I let out a quiet breath. You were talking to our son's girlfriend, I said. Behind his back. Behind mine. He didn't respond to that directly. I didn't think it would get this far, he said. That sentence didn't fix anything. It just made everything feel worse. Do you even hear yourself? I asked. He ran a hand over his face. I know how it sounds. No, I cut in. You don't. There was a pause. I looked at him and asked the one thing that actually mattered. Did you think about Ian? He hesitated. That hesitation answered everything. I didn't think about it like that, he said. And that was it. That was the moment something in me finally broke. Not when I read the messages. Not when Ian told me. Right there. Because it wasn't just that he did it. It was that he never even stopped to think about what it would do to his own son. I stepped back, putting space between us. You need to talk to him, I said. He nodded. I will. But I already knew how that was going to go. Because whatever this was, it wasn't something you could explain your way out of. And Ian wasn't going to just let it go. George didn't go upstairs right away. He stood there for a few seconds after I said it, like he was trying to figure out what version of this he was about to walk into. Then he asked, is he awake? I looked at him. You think he's sleeping? That seemed to land. He nodded once, like he understood what I meant, then walked toward the stairs. I didn't follow immediately. I stayed in the kitchen, staring at nothing, listening. At first, it was quiet. Just footsteps. A knock. Ian, George said. Calm. Careful. No response. Ian, can we talk? A pause. Then Ian's voice flat. No. George didn't move. I could hear it in the silence. Please, he said. I just want to explain. There was a short laugh from Ian. Not loud. Not angry. Just empty. Explain what? I felt something twist in my chest hearing that. George tried again. It's not what you think. Don't. Ian cut in. Don't say that. That was the first time his voice sharpened. I moved closer to the stairs without realizing it. Not going up. Just close enough to hear. You went through her phone, George said, like he was trying to take control of the situation. You don't know the full context. That was a mistake. I heard something hit the floor upstairs. Not hard. Just enough to break the quiet. I know enough, Ian snapped. Silence again. Then, quieter, but worse. You think I didn't see everything? George didn't answer right away. Ian. How long? Ian asked. Same question I had asked. Same tone. George exhaled. A couple months. There was another pause. You're lying, Ian said. I'm not. You're lying, he repeated, but there was no energy behind it this time. Just disbelief. I leaned against the wall, trying to steady myself. Hearing it again like this, it didn't hurt less. It hurt differently. You were in my house, Ian said. Talking to her. While I was here. I didn't plan for this, George said quickly. That sentence again. It sounded worse coming from him the second time. You didn't plan for it? Ian said. So what, it just happened? George didn't respond. That's what you're going with. Ian added. That it just happened? There was a long stretch of silence. Then George tried a different approach. Softer. Lower. It didn't mean anything. That was the worst thing he could have said. I heard Ian let out a breath, like something in him finally snapped. It meant something to me, he said. That line stayed with me. Because it wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was simple. And it carried everything. I was with her, Ian continued. You knew that. I know, George said. You knew, Ian repeated. And you still did it. I didn't think. I know you didn't think, Ian cut in. That's the problem. There was movement upstairs. Footsteps. Faster now. I stepped back slightly as Ian came down the stairs. He didn't look at George. Not once. He walked straight past him, grabbed his keys from the counter. Ian, George said, following him a few steps. Where are you going? Out. We need to talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. He headed for the door. Ian, don't just leave, George said. That's when Ian stopped. Not fully turning around. Just enough. You already did what you wanted, he said. Why do you care what I do now? George didn't have an answer. Ian looked at me then. And that was the hardest part. Because there was something in his expression I hadn't seen before. Not anger. Distance. I'm going to Chris's, he said quietly. I nodded. Okay. I wanted to say more. Ask him to stay. Tell him we'd figure it out. But I didn't. Because I knew he wouldn't. He opened the door and left. The house went quiet again. George stood there for a few seconds, staring at the door like if he waited long enough, Ian would come back. He didn't. I crossed my arms, not out of anger, just to hold myself together. That's what you did, I said. George didn't respond. That's what this is, I added. You didn't just cheat. You took something from him. He finally looked at me. I know. But it didn't sound like he really did. I shook my head slowly. No, I said. You don't. Because if he did, he wouldn't be standing there acting like this was something that could be talked through. This isn't just about us, I continued. You understand that, right? He nodded, but it felt automatic. I said I didn't plan for it, he said again, like repeating it would make it better. That doesn't matter, I replied. You kept going. That part he couldn't argue with. He sat down heavily in the chair, running his hands over his face. I'll fix it, he said. I almost laughed, but it didn't come out. You can't, I said. He looked up at me. I'll talk to him, he insisted. I'll make him understand. Understand what? I asked. He didn't answer. Because there wasn't anything to understand. Not in a way that made this okay. I took a slow breath. Ian said he doesn't have a dad anymore, I said. That landed harder than anything else. George went still. For a second, I thought maybe that would be the moment something changed. But then he just looked down. And I realized something. He didn't know how to fix this. Because this wasn't something you fix. It was something you live with. Or you walk away from. And I didn't know yet which one I was going to do. The house felt wrong after that. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just off. Like everything looked the same but didn't mean the same anymore. George slept on the couch that night. Not because I told him to. He just didn't come to bed. I didn't sleep much either. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the messages. The timestamps. The way everything overlapped with our normal life like nothing was wrong. Morning came anyway. I got up, got dressed, went to work like I always did. At the clinic, everything felt too normal. People talking, phones ringing, patients coming in. I moved through it automatically, answering questions, checking schedules, doing things I've done 1,000 times. At one point, Erica looked at me and said, "You okay?" I nodded. Just tired. She didn't push. Just gave me a look like she knew it was more than that. I made it through the day somehow. When I got home, the house was quiet. George's car was in the driveway, but he wasn't in the kitchen. I found him sitting in the living room, phone in his hand, staring at it. Did you talk to him? I asked. He shook his head. He won't answer. That didn't surprise me. I set my bag down and stood there for a second, taking in the space. Same couch. Same table. Same everything. It didn't feel like home. Ian texted me, I said. George looked up immediately. What did he say? He's staying at Chris's. He nodded slowly, like he expected that. Is he okay? He asked. I hesitated. He's not coming back tonight. George leaned back, exhaling like he already knew. There was a long silence. Then he said, I'm going to fix this. I looked at him. How? I asked. I'll talk to him, he said. I'll explain everything. That's not fixing it, I replied. He frowned slightly. Then what do you want me to do? That question sat there between us. Because I didn't have an answer that would undo what he did. I don't know, I said honestly. But explaining it isn't going to make it better. He ran a hand through his hair. I made a mistake. I shook my head. That wasn't a mistake, I said. That was a series of choices. He didn't argue with that. I ended it, he added. As soon as things got complicated. I stared at him. When was that? I asked. He hesitated. After Ian found out, he said. That told me everything I needed to know. So it didn't end because it was wrong. It ended because he got caught. I looked away for a second, trying to process that without reacting too fast. Does she know? I asked. That it's over, he said. Yeah. That she's not welcome here anymore? He nodded. She won't be coming back. The way he said it made it sound like he was setting a boundary. Like that was something he still had control over. I sat down across from him. This isn't about her being here, I said. She shouldn't have been part of this at all. He didn't respond. Ian trusted both of you, I added. That's what you don't seem to understand. I do understand, he said quietly. No, I replied. You understand that you got caught. That's not the same thing. That landed. He didn't push back this time. We sat there in silence for a while. Then he said, what are you going to do? I looked at him. I don't know yet, I said. But I'm not pretending this is normal. He nodded slowly. I don't expect you to, he said. That was probably the most honest thing he'd said since this started. That night, I didn't go to the bedroom either. I stayed in the guest room. Not as a statement. Just because I couldn't bring myself to sleep next to him. The next few days blurred together. Ian didn't come home. He texted me short messages. Letting me know where he was, that he was okay. He never mentioned George. George tried calling him. Messaging him. Nothing. At one point, he asked me to tell Ian he was sorry. I said, you can tell him yourself when he's ready. He didn't like that answer, but he didn't argue. At work, Erica asked again if I was okay. This time I said no. She didn't ask for details. Just sat with me for a minute in the break room, not saying anything. And that helped more than I expected. One evening, I drove to Chris's place. I didn't tell George. Ian opened the door, looked surprised for a second, then stepped aside to let me in. Chris nodded at me from the couch and gave us space. Ian looked tired. Not physically. Just drained. How are you? I asked. He shrugged. Fine. I didn't push that. I'm not here to talk about him, I said. He nodded. We sat there for a minute. Then he said, I'm not going back. The way he said it wasn't dramatic. It was decided. I figured, I said. I can't be in that house, he added. Not right now. I understand. He looked at me, like he was checking if I actually meant that. I'm serious, I said. You don't have to come back until you're ready. He nodded slowly. Are you staying? He asked. That question hit harder than I expected. Because I still didn't have an answer. I don't know, I said. He looked down. I don't think I can ever look at him the same, he said quietly. I swallowed. I know. And I don't know how you can either, he added. That part stayed with me. Because I didn't know the answer to that either. I left not long after. When I got back home, George was in the same spot. Waiting. He looked up when I walked in. Did you see him? He asked. I nodded. And? He's not coming back, I said. George closed his eyes for a second. I stood there, watching him. And for the first time, I realized something clearly. This wasn't just about whether I could forgive him. It was about whether there was anything left to stay for. Because whatever we had before, it wasn't here anymore. The house stayed quiet after that. Not the kind of quiet that feels peaceful. The kind that just sits there, heavy, like something unfinished. George kept trying in small ways. Not big gestures. Not dramatic apologies. Just small things. Asking if I needed anything. Trying to start normal conversations. Acting like if he kept things steady long enough, something would settle. It didn't. Ian still didn't come home. He texted me every day. Short updates. I'm good. At Chris's. Don't worry. That was it. Never once did he ask about George. And George noticed. One night he said, does he ever mention me? I looked at him and said no. That answer stayed in the room longer than anything else. A few days later, I went back to Chris's place. Ian opened the door again, same as before. Same tired look, but something about him felt more settled this time. Not better. Just decided. We sat down, and for a while neither of us said anything. Then he asked, is he still there? I nodded. Yeah. Ian looked away, jaw tight. I don't think I can come back, he said. I know, I replied. And I don't think I want to see him, he added. That one landed deeper. I took a breath. You don't have to. Not until you're ready. If you ever are. He nodded, like that was enough. Then he looked at me, more directly this time. What are you going to do? I didn't answer right away, because I had been asking myself that same question every night since this started. I don't know yet, I said. He held my gaze. I think you do, he said quietly. That stayed with me the entire drive home. When I walked back into the house, George was in the kitchen this time. Not sitting. Moving around. Trying to look normal. Hey, he said. You were out. I saw Ian, I replied. He stopped for a second. How is he? He's not coming back, I said. George looked down, like he was trying to process that in a way that made sense. I'll give him time, he said. He'll come around. I didn't respond to that. Because I didn't believe it. And I think part of him knew I didn't. I went upstairs and stood in our bedroom doorway. Nothing had changed. Same bed. Same dresser. Same life, technically. But it didn't feel like mine anymore. I thought about everything. The messages. The way he said, I didn't think about it like that. The way Ian said, I don't have a dad anymore. And the question Ian asked me. What are you going to do? I walked back downstairs. George looked up when he saw me. There was something in his expression. Not panic. Not even fear. Just waiting. Like he already knew this was the moment. I can't stay here like this, I said. He didn't interrupt. I can't pretend this is something we can just move past, I continued. Not when it did this to him. He nodded slowly, like he was bracing for it. I'm not asking you to forget, he said. I'm just asking for a chance to fix it. I shook my head. This isn't something you fix, I said. This is something you chose. There was a long silence. Then he asked, so what happens now? I took a breath. I'm going to stay with Ian for a while, I said. Figure things out from there. He nodded again. Slower this time. Okay, he said. No argument. No fight. And somehow that made it feel more final. I packed a bag that night. Not everything. Just enough. As I was zipping it up, I looked around the room one more time. I tried to feel something. Anger. Sadness. Anything clear. But all I felt was distance. Like whatever I had here was already gone, and I was just the last one to accept it. When I walked out, George was still downstairs. I'll call you, he said. I nodded, but I didn't say yes. I drove to Chris's place in silence. Ian opened the door, looked at the bag in my hand, and didn't ask any questions. He just stepped aside and let me in. That was enough. The next morning, I sat on the edge of the couch while Ian was still asleep in the other room. The place was quiet, but it wasn't heavy like the house. It felt honest. I thought about George. About 20 years. About everything that used to feel solid. And I realized something I hadn't wanted to say out loud. It wasn't just the cheating. It was who he chose to become while doing it. Someone who could look at his own son and not think about what it would do to him. That wasn't something I recognized anymore. And I didn't know how to build a life with someone I didn't recognize. Ian came out a little later, saw me sitting there. You stayed, he said. Yeah, I replied. He nodded once, like that answered something for him. We didn't talk about George. We didn't have to. Later that day, my phone buzzed. It was a message from George. I'm sorry. I'll wait. I stared at it for a long time. Then I locked my phone without replying. Because I didn't know if waiting was something I was ever going to ask him to do. And I didn't know if this was something time could fix. All I knew was that the version of us I had trusted was gone. And I didn't know if there was anything left worth saving. So now I'm here, sitting in someone else's living room, trying to figure out what comes next. Because the truth is, I didn't just lose my husband. My son lost his father. Do you walk away from 20 years because of one line that should have never been crossed? Or is this the kind of damage that means it was already over and I just didn't see it in time?